If I can walk back in time, I remember saying to Macmillan Bloedel, I said, you guys want to log, and we don't have any issue with you logging. We're not against resource development, but we want to benefit too. And I remember saying to them, I said, you take care of the harvesting, but we'll take care of the reforestation, because that's the biggest issue for our people. And they didn't agree to that. So we said, okay, well, we'll participate in harvesting. So we went from where 0 to now where we're at, and we're roughly about 150,000 cubic meters a year that we can harvest. And I remember Dallas Smith from northern Vancouver area. We were at a meeting, and he says, "Robert, what's happened?" He says, "You've gone on the dark side." So anyway, I seen Dallas after. I said, "Dallas," I says, "I didn't go to the dark side." I said, "They came over to me." To me, that's what it is. You're not going to any dark side. You're saying, how can we mutually participate together where there's a benefit to both of us? We would never be in a discussion with any logging company to purchase your logging sort that is needed so that you can sort all your wood in this area. Never, not in a million years, under that old entitlement system that we were going under. But now that it's a business perspective, we're looking at the mutual business benefits. And when we're doing it that way, it's a totally different picture. To me, that is how I see reconciliation happening. It's that the two parties sit down and say, this is how we're going to do it. Currently, the lands owned by Huu-ay-aht are within the green area, and since treaty, we have been able to add land. And this land we've now purchased, and we've also purchased land within this area here, and we've also purchased this piece of property. So since treaty, we've added almost 800 hectares of additional lands to Huu-ay-aht land.
I grew up in the era where logging was bad. They said no to the logging companies, trying to stop them. And Heart of the People video, it showed that we're from here and that. And so as time progressed on and treaty became reality, the government realized that fishery is not there. Forestry is the only viable option, because that's what the industry is here. And so they pursued that. As they got matured and older, and you realize that's the only thing that you can't say no all the time, and you're not going to benefit. So we had early partnerships to get our foot in the door for logging. And so we've slowly got in, and now we have tenure. So from cutting shake box as a nation to managing tenure, it was an eye-opener.
So now Huu-ay-aht is in charge, responsible for the oversight of its lands. Then what happens there as well is the revenue that gets paid out goes to Huu-ay-aht. That is a different business model from the perspective of the government that we report to is Huu-ay-aht. So then for that, Huu-ay-aht then can set the standards.
This is around Anakla community. We bought this private land early 2000, and if you go there today, you'll see that the trees are really growing really good. And the part that I like about this is that mostly cedar is planted here. So when our community says we need cedar for our future generations, well, there it is. And then the same thing with every other cut block that we do. We plant a higher degree of cedar per hectare than provincial standards require us to.
We communicate with the Huu-ay-aht government and sometimes directly with Ḥiuay-aht citizens, but with with council on what are some of the overall important factors, like questions like how much old growth cedar will be left, where are we growing the new cedar for the future, what about practices along major rivers and streams, what about soil erosion. So we have all the various standards we work with under, but we also have this conversation. And so after an area is cut until it gets green again, and it takes about, in 10 years, the area will be, you'll have trees that are probably up to 15 to 20 feet tall again.
It's a long process though. You know, growing trees takes time.
Yeah, this isn't a quick fix. This is the long-term fix. This is maintaining the attributes into the future, or providing the attributes into the future, rather than having to come back and constantly build back those attributes.
Every area we cut, we follow the provincial standards, we follow the FERPA guidelines, and we look at what the values are that have been identified to us by Ḥiuay-aht. Every area gets a cultural assessment. Every area gets a soils assessment. It gets a riparian plan, what you leave along streams.
The browsing can be... Yeah, so these are the shelters for the cedar trees to keep the deer and the elk from browsing on them. And then, yeah, so they're designed to let light through and everything so the trees keep growing.
Yeah, so this area at one time had more elk than it had, and they've just reintroduced a herd of elk. And so elk really enjoy eating cedar, and that's why they have the protection on them. So when you have this interaction between, this is their habitat, they work in riparian zones, or live in riparian zones and eat in riparian zones. So we had to put these, or this, we felt that we had to put some kind of protection on these trees so that we could maintain them to get above this height. And once they're above this height, or close to it, the elk won't damage the tree significantly. They can keep on growing.
When they're this small, if the elk if they go to browse them, they just tend to just pull them right out of the ground because they're so small, right?
Yeah.
So.
Every block that's cut goes through into the Ḥiuay administration office, talk about cultural values, that kind of thing, and we get a support letter back. So the process is integrated from that perspective. At the same time, we're identifying some forest areas that someone can go visit. Like I had one citizen say, you know, I want to know where I can take my kids to see the cedar that's growing, for instance.
Because our principle is that we have to provide for future generations. And what is the most significant species that we want? Cedar. So it's been a mandate to our forest company to plant a high degree of cedar, so that we're meeting that number one principle of our people, is that provide for future generations. So if you're planting a tree here, say in 2000, and you want to say 300 years from now, the cedar that's required for them are going to be here. And that ties in with when we say hišuk, awak, everything is one. So when you're managing your forest, you gotta take all things and all the creatures into consideration in your planning. To me, it's a simple process. It's not just us. There's not just an economic value. There's other values in managing a forest. We're slowly training people that work for us what hišuk, awak means, and what huu-ay-aht means, and what mean respecting the environment, and how do you apply it to your standards. And what I want to see is that Ḥiuay-aht is going to have one of the leading sustainable forest management plans in the province. And as a matter of fact, what I'd like to see is one day our people are going to choose to participate in it, they're going to be part of it, and the province is going to say, you know what, that's the model we want to follow. It's always been an objective of our current government and even past governments to balance our forestry needs versus our economic needs. So we have to look at how can we sustainably manage these forests.
Well, overall, the forestry is the profitable business. Like you're looking at like 80% of the revenue, the profit, clearly. The other businesses are good businesses. It just takes longer to develop. They provide sometimes more employment, like whether it's in your tourism business or like our hotel, the store. They all good businesses, but they have narrower margins.
Since treaty, we've probably increased our land by 11-fold. This area, under provincial standards, has a significantly higher AAC than what we've decided to log. So I'll give you an example. On treaty settlement land, the timber supply analysis done for us showed that we, by provincial standards, could harvest 58,000 cubic meters a year. What we're doing is now averaging, 50,000. So we're reducing that significantly. So what I would see is that we're actually going to start saying this area, just as an example, these are no-cut areas from now on. So they're planted, so they're left there for future generations. Right here at Fredericton Creek, there is an old road there, and they call it a causeway. It was a straight stretch. That's what we used to call it when we lived at Cookswies. But what they've done is they put 3 channels into that estuary. So now that the salmon, the young fry, have a place to go and be safe.
Standing on the old Tayii Main, where we've just completed a breach. This road was put in after 1928, I do believe. So it's been here a while, and the salmon have been not able to go on the other side of the road. So now we've got the 3 breaches in so that they can go back into Fredericks Creek, where they could only go at high water before. So hopefully we'll be able to see more fish enhancement in that area, and also up another little creek right in through here that has coho in it. So we're hoping to see the coho come back to that, and we're hoping to see the chum salmon come back into the Fredericks, and also our spring salmon and coho coming back to this river. So hopefully that'll all be good in the future.
With a project like this, if you provide the basis, that's the vision that the Huu-ay-aht have for a long term, is if you invest in the habitat restoration, then you will see for the generations to come, the fish will come back, and at least they'll have a safe haven.
Well, in the Sarita watershed right now, we have a renewal project that's going in that Bob Bocking's working on, where we have a lot of Huu-ay-aht citizens actually working with them. And so in order for us to reverse the effects of forestry and fisheries, we need work like this.
So we have a protocol right now with Western Forest Products, which is really meaningful. It touches on where the entire country is going in regards to truth and reconciliation. I say that because they're at a place where they recognize that we have different needs here within this area, within the Huu-ay-aht territory. But it's a really good thing, because there's not, I don't know anybody else right now that is working with industry in this way. They understand that through the negotiations that we're all about these 3 principles, and that's how everything in the Huu-ay-aht Nation is run by. Our citizens take an oath on those 3 principles, our government officials take an oath on those 3 principles, and our operations manage around those 3 principles.
The objective of stream renewal is to create fish habitat. So this year we're really doing the most projects that I've ever done. Huu-ay-aht kept putting in investments into fish habitat. There was also riparian assessments. So a lot of areas, they were not replanted, they were cut 50 years ago, and all you have is alder growing there. You look at some of these slopes there, it's all gravel, so once the water levels come up 5 meters, then it's all... So this is logjam that was like 60 meters long, up in certain areas 3 meters deep. So we had an excavator come in here, and he sorted through all these logs and chose the nice ones. And you can see all this is all cedar that's been lying in the creek already for 50, 60 years. It'll lie in the creek another 50, 60. We recabled some of the structures that were built 15 and 18 years ago. We built structures up here, and they kept, and some of them actually, they act as debris catchers, so they catch more wood. So the idea was, for the projects we did last year, was just to recable some of the additional wood that landed on the existing large woody debris structures. And this year we're building actually 70 structures here in the Pachina watershed. So that's quite significant. There will be additional fish habitat where there's nothing that exists.
I think what you're seeing is steps moving forward that helps bring balance back into our hāhuułi.
When they would cut right to a lake, clear cut through a stream and up the other side, not leaving a riparian or buffer, it's important to have the water temperature of creeks for the fish. Like the temperature rises if there's no trees. If you have trees, which is shade, trees are vital in that for rearing of creeks for the salmon. Like that's, so we learned from that. Well, the industry, I guess, the industry learned.
And, you know, to kind of get a feel for what happened in the past was that rivers and streams, they weren't set aside as anchors for reserves. They were just logged right up to the edge. And so because of that, it took away these structural attributes, and we have to now rebuild them, build them back in. So that's the different eras, different ways of seeing how the forest provides for.
Well, the buffer is it's essentially a leaf strip, no harvesting. So it's, in this case, a riparian buffer or leaf strip is, it's reserved for forever, basically. And in this case, it's S5 or S2, so it'd be a 50 meters, 30 meters of riparian reserve, and then a 20-meter management area, which we sometimes will selectively log some of the timber out of there to help try to keep it wind firm so it doesn't blow into the river. And the buffer along the main line is just a more of a visual constraint that we want to, hide a little bit of the harvesting activity for tourism.
The Huu-ay-aht are really good, kind of blazing the new trail here on saying, okay, we did the logging this way, and I think there's better ways of doing this, and then they're having top-notch expertise from Canada coming and joining the team and doing these recommendations. So if it's implemented going into the future, I think that will be really good for the forest and for the whole watersheds too, because there won't, the watersheds will have an opportunity to slowly come back. It might take decades, but they will come back.
So we're 18 months into the ʔuuʔałuk watershed renewal program, a major initiative by the Huu-ay-aht Nation. And we're carrying on probably for, at least another 3 years, if not longer. And the watershed renewal program is it's a major initiative by the nation, by the Huu-ay-aht First Nations, to revitalize watersheds throughout the entire hāhuułi of the nation, or the traditional territories of the nation. We're starting with watersheds of the Sarita, the Heart of the People, the Pachina, and the Sugsaw. These are watersheds that comprise a significant portion of Huu-ay-aht owned lands that they own through the Manulth Treaty, treaty settlement lands. The program's multifaceted, so we're spending resources, financial and human, on assessing the watershed, the condition of the watershed, the status of roads, the streams, the habitats adjacent to the streams for fish, for wildlife, vegetation. we're actually implementing significant renewal projects to revitalize habitats, stream habitats, by putting large woody debris into streams, creating side channels for salmon, planting and restoring riparian areas, and deactivating roads, just to name a few. We're also focused on looking at ways to have enhanced forestry management in the watersheds to preserve and sustain those important habitats, the ecosystems in perpetuity, in a manner that the Huu-ay-aht people would like to see accomplished. And we're also focused on fish enhancement.
The reason we're doing this is to make this a more robust system for the fish. We're hoping that by having conifers in this area, they're over the longer term, with a stronger root mass than the deciduous, and the ability for these trees, when they do fall into the creek, to form large woody debris, it'll be real long term. So it's about maintaining and promoting the health and vigor of the river is why it's being done. From an economic point of view, it costs money to do this, and yet it seems from the perspective of the value you're going to gain over the longer term that is money well spent.
So when I find out from my desk that you know there are sustainable practices being applied to our lands, I feel much better, and I think our citizens will feel better when they say, okay, for example here, that they know that buffer, you know, because of the hereditary chiefs, might be 100 meters, and they'll feel better when they know that we're doing fishery renewal work so that we can enhance salmon stocks in our streams. Those are all important things to our citizens. But leading the way is the hāhuułi council is involved. It's you know, their land, their resources, so they're applying the standards that they want to see.